Well, jeepers! You're listening to Smash or Pass.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another interview on the channel. I am JB, and joining me as the special guest will be Miss Patricia Murray. Thank you so much for joining.
Hi, you're welcome. Hi, everyone.
So I'm really looking forward to building a timeline of your career, touching upon, of course, the Scooby Doo movie, but beyond that and before that as well. So I guess doing my research on IMDb, I can see that an early credit for you was the makeup assistant in 1991. And I guess with that into consideration, was it always your plan to go into doing makeups and I guess later on prosthetics for film and TV?
Yeah, so I actually started my career in 1985. I began in fashion, editorial, commercials. At that point in my hometown, Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada, we had like live TV, so network TV. So I also worked there. And then in 1988, I got my first assistant job on a TV series. So that's kind of the updated timeline. And in 1988, I was asked to come in because the pilot it was called Murphy's Law, and the pilot they were creating was around models. And the head of department, makeup, heard in town that I worked with those models. So he asked if I could come in and work with the background. And so then my 5 days turned into a 9-month project.
Oh, that's really interesting. It's kind of really curious to know about all that stuff. And I suppose with that into consideration, there's a lot of things that people like to cite as defining moments in movies, and that's always been the case from movies, a while ago to movies coming out now that perhaps inspire people. So, was there a particular makeup effect or prosthetic that you saw in a movie, before your career that you feel really inspired you to go down that route?
Yeah, I was in high school and I went to see with all my friends at midnight in the theater, Dawn of the Dead, the zombie movie, Dawn of the Dead. Yeah, and then I started looking into how they made it because I was in art in school. And so I was really curious of how they created it. And that began my journey.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
definitely quite an iconic one. Of course, like that spanned so many different genres of things from the Night of the Living Dead, and I guess over here in the UK, Shaun of the Dead. Like just how that affected so many like generations of everything and cinema in general is very interesting to know that that was the kind of origin. And at that point, once you had locked in that that's what you wanted to do for a career, did you ever reach out to anyone or have a mentor that kind of steered you along in those early days?
Well, my mentor really became later. So it was my mentor and my best friend. He's passed away in the last year and a half, but his name was Bill Tarasakis, and he was a makeup effects designer.
Oh yeah.
So we met when he moved from Alberta to British Columbia, and we met in the late 80s, early 90s, somewhere in there. And 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 then so we kind of our careers kind of paralleled. And then at one point, he invited me to come over to special effects to work with him on set, because that was my background from being in photography, was understanding lighting and camera angles and framing. And he wanted to enrich and have me work with him. So to get the very best out of the prosthetics in all the levels. And
Yeah.
we kind of followed each other, or were paired to each other in our lives. Yeah.
I mean, definitely incredibly sorry for that loss, and as well the kind of ramifications as well. I believe I was doing some research on him for some Scooby Doo stuff as well, and of course, I believe he worked on a lot of the Planet of the Apes things as well. So
You did.
definitely a great talent. So thank you so much for sharing that because it's just I don't. It's kind of interesting how whilst things happen like that, there's definitely works that people are involved in that become immortalized, and it's good that he was around in those early days. And I think when you think about like, I guess job number one, do you recall like was that how that came about, or was there like another way before that you got your first job, on TV or movie?
It was word of mouth, really. I started with photographer. I got to understand lighting. I wanted to learn it. I wanted to understand camera angles. And, you know, in that time, it was the 80s. So we did a lot of fantasy with makeup, right? It was natural makeup wasn't so natural. You know, it was and I got recognized in that field for my natural makeup. And I was itchy really to move into the different mediums because I got more creatively inspired. And around 1988, I always went back for more and more education because at that time, you know, they didn't necessarily have the schools or the mentors weren't set up. You really had to go and get to know them. And so just before meeting Bill, I met Tibor Farkas, and he developed a little program, and I worked in the shop a little bit. And then for myself, how I work is I laser focus. So I had to decide, was I going to stay in the shop or stay on set? And I love being on set. That's like my forte. I love it. And so then as I moved through different mediums and moved up into head of department on TV shows, I would work with Bill Terzakis. And then he began to hire me as a makeup effects supervisor. So taking the skills I already had and supporting organizing the orders, the trailers, the applications on main characters with him. And that's how we worked together, always perfecting and moving with the changes, like from foam latex to silicone, you know. I was a head of department on Battlestar Galactica, and it was the first time the silicone was beginning to touch us and come out. So we played with the different velocities for the ball caps that I used on Battlestar, you know, and we moved on Battlestar from film to digital with a whole new environmental and impact on the makeups, and adjusted and changed with that. It was like our learning was really on the ground. And in those beginning years, you know, in film and television, it was more special effects and makeup effects with effects, you know, like Bill and I worked with Bill on Freddy versus Jason with Robert Englund, and a lot of the effects on that were practical. So we would have teams of makeup effects that would work with special effects, you know, with blood rigs and illusions that we created together as departments, working closely together.
Well, that's fantastic, because I do think that I'm doing quite a lot of learning sat here as well, because for all, you know, in this podcast series, we're about 80 episodes in now, that having interviewed, you know, authors and directors and composers, but you're the first person that we've had on that's been involved with makeups and prosthetics and all of those types of effects. So I guess without a doubt, people that have kept up with this series, in case they're maybe not completely familiar with the intricacies of that line of work, how would you best describe what you do to, I guess, someone outside the film industry?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So I'm in the place of my career where producers, I have an agent here in Canada. I work through an agent now. So a producer will get a hold of the agent. I'll be sent a script, and I'll read the script. I'll get interviewed, and I'll get the job. When I get the job, then I sit with the creatives. So that's the showrunners, that's the director, that's the studio producers. I'll sit with the creatives and support with the hair department and the wardrobe department, support the look and the feel, you know, of the actor or of the character before we even maybe have cast actors. And so I may come up with a visual board, ideas. So what I would do is research the possible actors they would like for the character and put together a board of possible looks, following the storyline. Terzakis and I would work together in the way, and other effects artists, where if I had a series, for instance, like Yellow Jackets, I did the first season of Yellow Jackets. So I had a series like that. I was hired 3 months ahead with a lot of meetings and a lot of development of those characters, working with all those creatives. And Bill came on, and him and I would sit with everyone, and he would develop a design, and then he would do a test that, if available, I would come and test with him at his shop to show it live, on video. One beautiful thing about Yellow Jackets is they're creatives, and other shows, when we can bring a balance of it being practical makeup, so the makeup effects, makeup, special effects, and then have visual effects work with it. It adds a whole other element of what's possible,
It seems really intricate, and of course, the backbone of what the audience sees from that perspective, selling the illusion. Quite often things nowadays can be masked with a lot of CGI, but that's why I really do appreciate how, you can make things. Like, it's just so immersive when you just hit that sweet spot. You don't even feel like you're watching a work of fiction. It's like someone's put a video camera in an alternate reality where we're genuinely seeing this. So it is absolutely amazing, that type of work. But again, kind of going back to perception, I guess when you see something credited as, makeup, I think for someone outside of the film industry, it's easy to kind of think, like eyeliner, like something that you do before a night out. So what's the kind of myths about that you kind of want to dispel, or maybe even vindicate to an extent?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thanks for that question. After all that happens, and we get the actors in the trailer, and then we'll do film tests, trying different products. And it's really important for the actor to feel the character. So every nuance is felt, like where they've come from, where they're going, what happened to them. So to not play themselves is really important for them to dive in. So often, I love this expression, I've worked from it a lot, is less is more. There's nothing to prove in the character. Let that actor's natural radiance, natural character fall. We may have someone come in with a scar and we may highlight it. It's never told in the story, but it's part of the persona, of the character. We may not correct certain skin tone, or we may add effects of being outside, or hungry, or effect like certain color and texture. Maybe if their character is playing someone that's an addict, we'll add that, all the subtleties, bags under their eye if they get in a fight, if they're sweaty, all of that stuff we add to it. And it's very, very planned out. It's very much every frame tells a story without words, as far as makeup, hair, and wardrobe. And that's how the audience can feel submerged in it, because it feels very real and they feel like they are a part of it. Every genre is a bit different. I like to choose the ones where it feels really raw and very much like you could be a part of that journey with that person.
Yeah, absolutely. It's why we care about so many characters, and why so many different things just become so iconic in terms of fandom culture and just, I guess, merch sales as well. If you want to look at it from that side, people want to collect things from characters that they know and love because of that attachment. And so I think one thing that fascinates me more than any, like hearing about these stories, is how technology and everything has really affected things. And quite often with these interviews that we do, the people that are most attracted to watch it are people that are aspiring to go into the career that, of the person that we're interviewing. And so when you see stuff on like YouTube and TikTok, there's so many ways that people can showcase their own, homemade effects and homebrew effects, and even down to what we're doing here. Like back in the day, like this would only ever happen on a radio station or something, and now we've kind of got the ability to do it via Zoom. And so have you ever seen, I guess, the rise of someone or the entry of someone that has kind of used their social media platform to showcase maybe their skills in prosthetics and makeup?
I mean, sure. I feel that it's a good reference point. I know for myself, producers check out my Instagram profile a lot because they'll message me. I have directors and producers that message me through Instagram. However, where I am, I can only showcase my work after it's already been filmed. So a lot of what I'm currently working on is behind the camera, as long as I don't reveal anything. You know, it's really like you may not see what I work on my profile for 4 or 5 years. It's that kind of journey. When you're starting out, yes, show your work, get feedback, live feedback. I believe it's, competition is important. And what I want to say about that is competition with self. So how can every makeup I put on, I have this little formula in my mind. If it's 85% what I visualized in my mind and on screen, that is a good day. Because it takes that one moment, that one frame to make the 85% 100% and believable. And give myself the grace of that percentage, of that space, lighting, camera angle, the product's been on for 16 hours, all those different things behind the scene. So I really feel in myself, every makeup I put on, whatever it is, a beauty makeup, a natural makeup, a prosthetic, I'm always looking and focusing on the details and how to prove it. I love to mix product up. I love to experiment with new product. I love companies that send me product to try, and I'll try it. I love talking about it on Instagram. I'm not attached to one product or one color. I love it when we, as artists, come together and share information. And yeah, grab a mentor, grab someone. I'm happy, by the way, I answer questions and emails and continue to share. I think that's the biggest thing. Like, even if we have 5 artists in the trailer and we're doing the same makeup, the same product, we're going to all translate it differently. That's the beauty of it. There is no other you. So we don't have to worry about trying to hide information. Share it, and allow it to grow and evolve and become something. I'd love to share quick stories with you, like in the original, I worked on a lot of cop series, and it was we didn't have a lot of visual effects then, right? So it was practical. And there, I would, with the special effects, put the peas in the thing of blood, suck it in a straw, and they would roll. And then I was just off frame, squished, in the car, and I would blow so they would get a bullet wound right here, because pea with blood makes a great effect. I was on another show where the camera's angles changed, and I'm assuming I can talk this way with your audience, like some pretty gory stuff.
Oh,
but
yeah,
the
of course.
thing was, the action was someone killing another human with a knife, and the camera angle changed, so it was that person's POV. So what did I do? I ran to craft service. I cut half a watermelon. I sliced it, mushed it all up. I took some out and I poured blood in it. Then we got to grip poles, and we viced it together. So it was the camera with the plastic on it, looking through. And when the person hit the watermelon, the blood and the guts would splatter up to get that kind of effect. I've had to make brains out of banana and oatmeal at the to go, oh gosh, we've got to have that against the wall. So there's things I've had. Some we weren't supposed to show a bullet wound. I didn't have my product. I was away from my trailer. So I just grabbed hair gel, hard hair gel, and I made the bullet wound and colored it and put on the blood. So I always invite artists to experiment in so many ways. And if you're, doing makeup effects, also learn beauty, also learn pottery, also learn art on canvas, like really expand your knowledge base, because they all come together. If people just do beauty, do pottery, do art, try some prosthetics, because all of it comes together to make you a more well-rounded artist.
See, I love that because that speaks to what you were saying before. Not only a kind of like less is more approach, but also that sharing of knowledge. Like I've got no doubt that there's going to be someone watching this that has that question on their mind, like, so now at this point I can go and get a watermelon, I can get all the things that was listed and try it out for myself, and kind of use that as the kind of springboard to get from their position of wanting to get into what you do to, I guess, almost, being in the situation that you're in now in the future. And so if there was one piece of definitive advice, if, as an aspiring makeup artist, prosthetics, were to come up to you and say, like, how do I do that? What would that be?
Well, so as far as the industry, get to know the industry around you. Like there's non-union, then there's union, and there's protocols and trainings. Get to know it. Start following on social media those people. Start reviewing what great makeup artists have done, what incredible directors and cinematographers have done. Like really start to build your resource and trail back to the very beginning, the first Planet of the Apes. When Dick Smith and all his amazing teachings are still out there. Follow the legacy that others put before you. And one thing I really wanted to say is that it's not an individual career, meaning that when you come in, it's all about teams. I get hired as a head of department or designer on a show. I hire the team, and I have teams. The shows I do now, I have teams between 5 and 20 people, and work together, support each other. And we all have these strengths, and we all have things we're still learning. It's okay. It's part of being human. So you can support each other even in that. It's not an individual process. It's really like when the Scooby Doo, back to Scooby Doo, we had 2 designers like Steve Jackson and all his crew, Bill Terzakis and his crew. They shared the creatures, the monsters, and then some of them got that they just went straight animation. They no longer had them in the script, and so I was part of Minor 49er, and so I helped Bill create on set with that, and then he had his whole team in his shop. I was in direct communication with everyone, and it's a team. So you got to know it's not an individual process, and to be okay with that. Yes, know everything, and also support each other. One thing about designers, when I work on a show and hire one, that's really great, I find, is I'm speaking to a peer, a designer, and I can say, when I applied this piece on set, it was great, other than what I'm finding is this actor's muscle is really prominent. So can we find a way to change the edge, move the piece? Can you give me another section here that we can fill in, so when the actor doesn't have to worry about it, they can just move. Yeah.
See, I love that. That's a bit. So sorry for cutting you off.
No, it's okay. I get very enthusiastic about this because I think that's a big illusion. We go out in career and we come so micro-focused. We want to see the big picture. Get to know the cameraman, get to know the cinematographers, and what the director wants. If you're go on a show and you don't know, start looking up who's the players. Because I got to tell you, it's something about life. The people that have the most talent, I find, the most commitment and are incredible, they don't talk about it. They don't talk about the incredible things they've done, right? They're just in the middle of work.
Yeah, like unassuming.
Yeah. And so you can really learn a lot by witnessing and watching. Yeah.
I agree. And I mean, that's the driving force behind why, to start a show like this, to absorb all that knowledge and to have it on repeat on demand, essentially, as well. Like, it's that sharing of knowledge which is the driving force, which I absolutely love. And it's why I love these superhero movies, because I think as a kid, when you watch something, you obviously you're aware of the credits, you're aware of the work that's been put into it, but there's not actually a way for you to visualize all the people that put a lot of hard work and time to function as that unit to go into things. And so now in the era of the superhero like genre that are doing all these post-credit scenes, at least there's kind of a way now that people are almost forced to sit through and appreciate all the people that worked on it. And so I guess expanding on the theme of superheroes, one thing that you're credited as, which I absolutely love, it was one of my favorite shows back when it was still running, was Arrow. So what was that about? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, so I know the artist that did the pilot, and her name is Connie Parker. And all the creatives involved in that show wanted it to be very authentic to the comics. They really wanted to follow. It was really, really important. So I got asked to come on to the series. She wasn't available. I got asked to come on to the series and follow through with that. And as the series developed, we got to understand and know that they were bringing in other superheroes. And they had like this 7-year plan of the branch out into all this and how they would overlap. So one of the things that kept being spoken to me about, and the word that kept coming through all the makeups there, starting to establish them, was very true to the character, very true in the way of raw. So, the island sequences. So people could really feel that they were there and the character was there. So whether that was dirt or filming in the rain, the stubble, the makeup that had Stephen look like he'd been out for a long time. And then the characters that followed, the different things that we did, tattoos, Bondo scars, all the different things that we did. They wanted to be able to tell the story as raw and still true to the comic as possible. That was really important to them.
Yeah,
I
it was
felt
phenomenal.
all of it,
Mm.
because I wasn't available to go on to it for season 2. And so one of my team members stepped up, and I supported her stepping up, and the studio loved that she stepped up. And she was on it for a long time, Danielle Fowler, and then Danielle went off to do other superhero series. So never know where your
Yeah.
life leads you.
It is amazing. I love all those scenes on the island. I don't know. I don't know how things were filmed. I think up until recently, I kind of assumed that things were filmed in the order which you see it, which of course is never really the case. But I just love how the scenes of Oliver on the island, like of course there was an incentive there to make him look as almost, I guess, I don't know quite well like washed out, like obviously, fallen on hard times. But then when you contrasted that with him with his suits and the kind of queen, the queen industries, like it didn't look goofy, which I think it could have quite easily if you just stick like a Santa bit, but all of it looks so realistic and you really feel for him in those scenes and then see the front that he's putting on in many ways in the scenes where he's kind of living that type of Bruce Wayne type of lifestyle. So I just really love at least the earlier seasons, especially for that reasons, because of course, once all the island stuff was sorted, that contrast kind of ended. But that was kind of my favorite part about the show, the duality of both of the Olivers, which I think definitely lended itself to that work really well.
And then the actor himself was really into it, which is wonderful, Hey, Stephen, like it's written here, I'd love to do the stitch on camera on you. The stitches,
Mm.
the wound or knife wound, I can't remember what it is. And he was really into it. Let's do it. So then I would order a piece and I would show him how it worked, which we put a little fiberglass plate under. So when they're stitching, it's a dolled out hook needle and they go on it on camera. And then we have that actor, whoever's stitching, to practice. And it's, yeah. And so when you pull it, it's as if skin is tightened. And I love that he was so much into all these ideas, which was awesome.
See, that kind of brings me on to my next question in many ways, because of course, when I looked at like the credits, it was all that work in Arrow, but then there's other instances where it almost hones in on a particular actor, like it hones in on an individual more than I think a whole production. At least that's how it seems. So, for instance, working with Kat Dennings. So, is there any change in either your methodology or your experiences when working with a particular individual versus more of that
The
show
team.
vibe? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So the individual is, I still have the script, still have the meeting. I get interviewed for it. Sometimes the actor, they usually have their representatives. Sometimes they'll themselves might meet me on the phone or Zoom. And so what it is that in adjusting to it, I realize that it's really just being there for them, meaning that usually it's a character going through something. So it's a little bit of a different feeling. So it's being aware of what's on set, but also being there just for them and how the set maybe impacts them. Maybe it's the whatever focus they are to get into the character. And them, the actors, really understanding that that helps them most at that time for the script or where they are filming or whatever's moving in their life. And we work on the looks, whatever that look is, they come forward and then they're presented to the creators. They've already talked to the creators, so working with me, it gets translated and then we can present it. Yeah. So yeah, and I'm a direct communication with the team, the AD team, etc. Yeah.
That's incredible. And another credit that I found for you was for 13 Ghosts, which is, of course, so iconic. I mean, do you have any memories around working on that film at all?
So I was brought in. There was so many talented makeup effects artists, Howard Berger, and I think Charles Poirier was the head of the department, if I remember. And so with Howard, I was brought in actually to cover one specific character. So I wasn't there the whole time. I was a handful of days. I can't remember how many days. It was the nurse with the burn. So it was a big, I believe it was gelatin at the time, burn. And each character, I was a single artist. However, most of the characters had 2 or 3 artists. So you would walk into set, right? And you had all these 13 ghosts and all these incredibly talented artists. And a lot of it, again, was right at that age of a lot of practical visual effects crossover. So it was quite the set to be on. It was really fun.
That's incredible. And of course, you mentioned that you worked on that one character. And so, to that end, did you at that point not have any interaction with either Matthew Lillard or Ernst Harth at that point?
No, I didn't have, well, a hello, but the interaction was really with my character, the nurse.
Hmm. That makes sense. And I guess speaking about, Matthew Lillard and Tia and stuff, I guess this brings us on to a bit more of the Scooby Doo side of things. And I always like to kind of citation this because it's like there's been so many instances where we've spoken to people that have worked on the 1969 series, and I'm talking like, okay, can you tell me what this was like and that was like? And that's kind of a big ask because I kind of think to myself, if someone were to put me on a Zoom call and say, tell me about what you did last Monday, I couldn't tell you. So I guess it's been a while, especially this year with it celebrating its 19th anniversary. But I guess just talking about Scooby Doo in general, prior to your work on the Monsters Unleashed movie, what was your experience like, or how familiar were you with the Scooby franchise?
Well, so it came out just when I was little, the Unleashed, Scooby Doo Unleashed, And so for me, it was like the Saturday night cartoons on our 14 screen little TV that was first black and white, then moved into color. And later, the films, I have memory of them, but not a lot of memory. But I remember going to matinees to see the films in a movie theater that was actually a round movie theater, like a dome, when I was a kid. You know, it was Scooby Doo, it was Bugs Bunny. Those were the big ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And you know, what I loved about Scooby Doo, and it's funny, the character I related to most with the movies to come and all the different experiences I had was actually Scooby. I loved Scooby as a kid. I loved his energy, his curiosity. And to me, he just felt always so vivacious. So that to me was my favorite character in it.
Oh, that's incredible. And I guess when it got to the stage of working on the movie, did that involve visiting any of the set pieces at all?
Yeah, so Bill Terzakis and Steve Johnson were the makeup effects working together. And I was brought on once we started past the makeup test. Because I was working on other films. So I was brought on past the makeup test, and I was part of the minor 49er. So that would be my character. So it would be Bill and myself applying. And then because I was, like I said, on multiple shows, then it would be three of us, Bill, myself, and a woman called Monique Vanier, and then also a woman called Shauna McGrath came to support that character. And so it was Bill and I would apply and color and seal the edges of the foam pieces that were going on. And then all that beard was hand laid. It was hand laid on, and we dress it. And then he would see the hair department. Then he would come back, and we actually had a suit on him, a big suit on him. And with the big suit, he would have to have a cooling suit because it was summer. And then for the peg lay, it was an old methodology where we would use a strap, and he would hold his knee up, and we would strap his leg up. So his leg would be hooked with green screen to go down or up, you know, and then the stump would go on. So his whole process of getting ready between all of our departments was 7 to 8 hours.
Oh gosh.
And then a lot of his shooting was actually so a lot of the shooting the monsters. So I was involved in him, and then the tank man with the glow. So a lot of our shooting was on another unit, so away from main unit, because then visual effects would do their part of it, and then they would add it to where they're adding it in the movie. Yeah, so got to know the intimate group of all of us working together. It was, and it usually was nighttime, you know, all-nighters. And yeah, it was great. And Ernest did great. I mean, he really respects being a character. You know, he really focuses, he really studies the walk and how they want it. And he would drink shakes while he was in the makeup. And then after we applied it, he would actually have a regular meal. You know, so it's really important, the people in the prosthetics, as much as the application and the painting and the display of it, the person brings it to life, you know. And there's a talent and a technique for actors that wear prosthetics.
Yeah, there's so many like wild stories that when we sat down and interviewed him, there were like those types of situations like you just mentioned, that it was a lot of nighttime recordings, and so quite a lot of times it was that much of a process to put like the outfits and the prosthetics on, that by the time filming had finished, it was almost a situation of having a power nap in the suit and then kind of getting back for more, which is just absolutely mind-blowing to me. All the work ethic and the teamwork more than anything that is required to do that, and that's absolutely incredible. But I suppose to build a bit of a timeline for me in terms of things, I'm not sure if you did get to view the link I sent. It was just footage from the test. And so when you were preparing Minor 49er, was that to prepare for a test, or was that to prepare for shooting for the movie?
When I worked with him, it was for shooting with the movie. And as you're talking, I believe I was involved in one test. it was after they had done the adjustments to him with wardrobe and everything, and there were some beard adjustments done, I believe, coloring. And then there was another test, and then we went into filming.
See, that's so interesting, all that, because it's almost like I'm trying to build a timeline of this, which I think is important to do on an anniversary, around about an anniversary time of the movie, to kind of get more behind the scenes stuff. Because I'm the type of person that I could never, like, to me, for a DVD release or a cinema release or any type of like home media, there's no such thing as too many bonus features, and that's something that I feel like DVDs nowadays are lacking so much. And even those test footages that I sent earlier, the fact that that was uncovered 18 years after the movie, and it's like that would have been the perfect thing to include on the DVD. It's just so I love hearing about all these kind of behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's something to say, like, so my background coming from like horror movies, cop shows, different things. It's wonderful to be part of Scooby Doo, because I had young children and I was like, Mom, I can bring my children to watch this. It's like, and like you said, it's universal, and it will keep its audience because it's an adventure movie, a family movie. So it's kind of nice.
Especially those live actions, and it's so cool to see the adaptation, because Monsters Unleashed, I guess it could have gone two routes. It could have either given kind of different villains that were maybe set up for the film, or it did what it could have done and really harkened back to that original series, bringing to life a lot of those original monsters. And such as, of course, Minor 49er was in the original series, and Captain Cutler was in the original series. So at any point in your process, did you have to refer back to the original series, or was it just, I guess, to realize the designs that were already set out there?
Yeah, so Bill Terzakis would have been that one, like really researching that, and then he supplied the look for me to see. So if anything, for me, it was a lot of memory, of when I was a kid, and then I would have reference material that I would go, okay, here's what we're building on. Then once we do the application, we have pictures all over our trailer to keep following that reference so that everything stays true. And the beautiful thing I liked working about Bill Terzakis was his eye for detail. He was very specific. And for me, it kept increasing the quality of artist that I became. So I loved it. Yeah.
And you mentioned working on Minor 49er, and of course Captain Cutler, which was, the scuba diving ghost, which again is a really iconic one. So were those the two monsters that you worked on, or were there others in that mix?
Yeah, that was the focus of those two. Yeah. Minor 49er, I'm sorry, Captain Cutler, with the helmet. It was actually two pieces of glass together. And what we actually did was ended up between, exploring with some of Bill Terzakis' other artists, and all of us kind of talking and figuring it out. But it was glow sticks. We would cut the glow sticks and pour it in. And then we would have like 4 hours of that bright glow, so that, again, we could do practical. Yeah.
That's incredible. And with, like, I guess going around, like, seeing everything that was going on in the movie, or perhaps from memory of Scooby-Doo, is there a monster or aspect of the film that you kind of wish in hindsight that you'd worked on and didn't at the time?
Well, we had planned, so Bill and I was part of the pre-prep. And so the planning was to have all those monsters that you see in that test there, practical. And we were excited about creating all of them and the teams that were involved in all of them. Because if you look at one character light, it's usually 2 to 3 artists that have that character come to light on a daily basis. So it was quite an adjustment to go from all those character okay, these are the two you're actually doing.
Yeah, I
You
don't know
know,
what went on there. We were speaking to the VFX supervisor, and apparently behind the scenes there was almost a rift of, him and a few people on that side that really wanted all the monsters to be practical. And then I believe pushback from the studio wanted them to make it more like, I guess, CGI effects. So it is such a shame because I think that in that era, at least, I think it would have lended itself really well to do things all practically, especially for the fear factor. Although maybe they wanted it to be less scary. So I'm not really sure what went on there, but it definitely is a shame.
yeah, and it can happen like even now. We'll get a script and I'll start talking to designers and we'll come up with ideas for the practical nature. And right up till the last moment, they'll decide if it's going to be visual effects or practical.
Yeah, it's quite rare. I think the last practical, well, I guess major practical set piece that people were made aware of, but that it was practical. I think they did something for the latest Stranger Things. There was kind of a thing where they did that practically like they would have done, in the movies that I was watching when I was a kid. And so that was a nice welcome because I've watched so many Marvel movies that I absolutely love. But you look at these big set pieces and then it takes you behind the scenes and it's instead of like 50 people in a battle scene, it's one person not with the full suit, and I don't know,
Yeah.
it's kind of all, it's a bit jarring nowadays, so you don't quite know where the line is. But I guess we've spoken a lot about the positives of all of these aspects, and I guess not to dwell on anything negative, but in terms of challenges, perhaps, are there any particular challenges that could arise from your line of work, and how is the best way to overcome a lot of those?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, when when you plan for prosthetics, um, I find with my experience, the more tests you can do, the better before you get to camera. So, because every time you put on an appliance, you're going to see the wear and tear. You may want to see it behind camera, like filmed, so you can see how it's going to look on camera and have time for adjustments and actors' comfort, right? And maybe the studio has an idea or the creatives have an idea, but once they see it live, so to speak, they may want adjustments. Adjustments you wouldn't be able to do practically when you're filming. So, 2 or 3 tests before are great to get everybody comfortable, familiar, to make adjustments. And then, for instance, I'll give you a quick story. I was doing a slit throat and the production was running out of time. And they only wanted me to create one side of it. So that's what I did, colored and created one side of it, blended. We went to the set, and the whole time they set up the camera on this side instead of that side because of the wrong communication that came to me down the line. So
Oh
then I got
gosh.
up there and they had to change all their lighting, all their camera, reposition, block the scene so that they could shoot it. So if anything on our, one thing when you're a crew working on a set on show and you're doing something, you're always have a timeline, a strict timeline and budget. And you also have like the communication is important. If people aren't clear or even know what to ask or how to ask or who to ask, because the mechanism or the nature of filmmaker is very rapid pace moment. And as a makeup artist, prosthetic artist, you're there first and you have to be ready by the time set is ready for you. So those pressures are there all the time. And over time you find a way to navigate it. Like I'll read a script and I'll say, okay, so this is probably about the budget for it. Do you have the time and the budget to create how you want it to look?
That's understandable. And in terms of expanding on that word there, pressure, when it comes to working on, like we've mentioned characters like Minor 49er, that at that point, that could have been someone's favorite monster back in 1969, and now they're going to the big screen to see it realized in live action format. Does that knowledge add extra pressure on your end to, when
Well,
working on those characters?
absolutely. And same with the superhero, like it was really important, for instance, with Arrow, that the fans were happy that as we brought characters in, they have input, because the show is doing it for them. So yeah, all of that's important for sure.
And in terms of, I guess, getting to the process of wrapping up some of the stuff about Monsters Unleashed, do you have a particular memory from working on that movie that you can share today, please?
Really, it was for me on set, seeing the set and seeing the actors that played the characters and hearing the Scooby Doo voice, and then our couple of monsters there. And it was just, you have a moment, like it happened to me. I worked a little bit on Star Trek, the movie, and you have a moment where it's like you're stepping from your childhood into your adulthood, and it's right in front of you. You never would have imagined at 6 years old that you would be part of it. So it's a really big aha moment. And the talent behind filmmaking is enormous. And to sit and stand and be part of it, yeah, it's pretty exciting.
It is
Yeah.
crazy. It's like that's kind of how I feel. I've almost got a little tiny bit of that taste, just experiencing it from this hand. So I can't imagine what it must have been like to actually have been there. It's absolutely amazing. And to that end, whilst on set or even after the fact, did you ever get to keep any mementos or anything from the Scooby-Doo 2 like experience?
No, they all went into the production. Usually a studio holds them. I have some pictures, and so pictures are just, I mean, I have my palette. I keep my palette because I create a palette for the characters with all my colors. So I'll do that. I'll keep that. And maybe a poster, a shirt. My kids wore the Scooby Doo hat all over the place when they were little, the crew hat. Uh, Sometimes, very rarely, you might get handed something in my position. And mostly it's like it's enough being a part of it.
Mm. Yeah, like 100%. And of course you mentioned having young kids at the time around that. And so I guess like for me personally, I still watch these movies at like 24. So not that you necessarily needed that excuse, but when the movie did come out, did you attend the premiere or did you watch it much after the fact?
Yeah, I watched it in theater. I don't have a memory if there might have been a premiere that I watched. I actually can't remember. But I did bring my children. I brought a few kids. So I remember it was the premiere, and I did bring them, and it was one of the first premieres they could come to, if I remember correctly, locally. I can't remember. But anyway, I did bring. It's so funny. It was exciting for them to see my
Yeah,
name,
like I
on,
couldn't imagine.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
But I guess with your amazing career, you're no stranger to being part of a movie or a franchise that has lasted the test of time. That's definitely evident from things such as 13 Ghosts and all of those projects. But given that Scooby-Doo 2, by the time this is premiering, it's either going to be the day before or the week to the exact date of the 19th anniversary of the movie. So, how does it feel like to be part of something that is still beloved after all that time?
It's exciting. It's part of why I do this. Like for me, when I'm working on any film, each frame is timeless. Each
Mm.
frame is part of history, and it's someone's history. This media, this platform of filmmaking, even what we're doing right now, impacts so many people. So it's how are we gonna, my part of it, how am I gonna have it be um, uh, a space that people are empathetic and feel that this character is real for them in whatever way, and knowing it's timeless, it's here for a long time. I get people that contact me saying shows I've almost forgotten about, because you work and it just becomes part of what you do. And they get a hold of me and they say, "Oh my God, I just saw the credit. You did do this." Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, wow, thank you.
No, that's incredible. And I suppose moving on now from the past, looking forward to the present and the future a bit, are there any upcoming projects or recently released projects that you've worked on that you can talk about a bit, please?
Yeah, I did first season of Yellow Jackets, so that's a Showtime program. It's very, part of my hiring on that was the raw reality of it, and the talent involved really inspired me. It's very, it's quite shocking, if people don't know about it. The storyline is about a soccer team of girls that get lost on a mountain, and what happens during that time. And then you flash forward to their adulthood and how they've been impacted by these events, being on the mountain for 19 months as young kids. So, and a lot of things happen there. So, I really enjoyed working with all the creatives. They were very much and very supportive of me bringing forward ideas and working with the actors, bringing forward ideas. It's I wouldn't say it's a light, fun movie, but it's really good acting, really good talent. So I invite people to watch it, Showtime series. The project I just finished in December isn't it like filmed internationally. We got to go to different countries, and I can't say a lot about it other than people that like Godzilla may be interested in it.
Oh,
Yeah. So it will start coming out in the fall, maybe next spring. There's many elements to it. Really great cast, really fun writing, great adventure. Yeah, I believe it's going to be something else to watch. I've worked with Apple TV on a few projects. One of them that's like a family project was only for 2 seasons, but really worth checking out, was Home Before Dark. And that was based on a true story of a young girl who I think was between 9 and 11 in New York that solved a 25-year-old murder. And she's this little journalist, this actual girl, and she got an award for her journalism, the youngest person. And so the Apple TV started to create and develop and launched the 2-year series. So that's really worth seeing too. Yeah. And in that I did a lot of aging in the first year and second year. So because we have different timelines, so there's aging and different things that happen on it.
There's definitely a lot that I'm definitely personally really interested in. Without a shadow of a doubt, people watching this will be interested in keeping up with that as well. So, where is the best place for people to keep up with all the news about those projects?
Yeah, so it is my Instagram. So it's Beyond MUP, Beyond Makeup. So in that, I post when I can, and I'll do trailers when I can. Like I said, where I'm at, we have to wait until it publicly comes out for us to share. Yeah, definitely keep track there, and they can look around my account because I've left some trailers up. Then they'll know how to find it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'll definitely be sure to leave that linked in the description down below as well, because that all just sounds so exciting. And that does conclude all of the questions that I had for you today. I just wanted to thank you so much for how generous you've been with both your answering of the questions and, of course, the time that you've given today. So thank you so much for being on.
Yeah, you're so welcome. And thank you for doing these podcasts. I think there's amazing, it's amazing for people to be able to speak about and share the art of filmmaking, because even though it has its budgets and timelines, it's still an art. It's a playground for all of us artists in every way. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. And another thing that I really appreciate for, I guess, the purpose of wrapping up the recording is for people, it's the people watching this. So thank you so much for everyone watching this. I hope that you've enjoyed this episode. It's really amazing to see a lot of like people in the comment sections that have stuck with the whole series since episode 1. And of course, all the new people as well. So that's absolutely incredible. So if you do want to see more, then please like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you next time.